The sound of motorcycles shattered the morning calm of Valley Forge. They thought they'd found just another small-town cafe to extort another single mother who would fold under threats, another easy target for the Savage Syndicate MC. But behind the counter, Samantha Foster's hand stayed steady as she poured coffee, muscle memory from years of leading combat missions taking over. While the leather-clad bikers circled her cafe like wolves, they had no idea those same hands had orchestrated some of the most successful special forces operations across 3 continents. The friendly cafe owner they saw serving pastries and teaching her 12-year-old daughter Hannah about the family business had once been Commander Foster, with a combat record that made hardened soldiers whisper her name now as these bikers threaten everything she loves. They're about to learn the most expensive lesson of their lives. Sometimes the deadliest predator isn't the one showing its teeth, it's the one quietly calculating your demise. While serving you your last cup of coffee, let's take a quick break. Tell us, where are you tuning in from? If this kind of content speaks to you, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is something truly special. Dawn painted Valley Forge in shades of gray as Sam Foster moved through her morning routine at Foster's Corner Cafe. Her movements were precise, economical, born from years of military discipline. Rather than simple cafe ownership, the coffee machines hummed to life under her EXP experience, touched their familiar rhythm, mixing with the sound of bread warming in the oven. Through the windows, she watched the town slowly wake. Valley Forge wasn't much, just another dot on the map between larger cities. But it was home now, a place where she'd thought she could leave behind the weight of combat decisions and mission briefings. The wall behind the counter held carefully arranged photographs. Most customers saw only what she wanted them to see. The cafe's open day, Hannah's first day of school, community events, but hidden among them, for those who knew where to look, were other markers of her past: a Silver Star ceremony, a combat team photo, medals that spoke of sacrifice and service. The bell above the door chimed, pulling her from her thoughts. George Henderson made his way to his usual corner booth, his cane tapping a steady rhythm against the hardwood floor. Despite his age, the retired Army surgeon moved with the precise efficiency of a man who'd spent decades in uniform. Morning, Commander, he said, easing into his seat. Just Sam now. George, you know that she was already moving, his coffee cup in hand. Black, no sugar. Some habits never change. Once a commander, always a commander, especially one with your record. His eyes sharp despite his ears, scanned the room before settling on her. Heard anything about the trouble over in Highland? Sam's hands stilled momentarily on the coffee pot. Joe's place. George nodded grimly. Whole garage burned down last night. 3rd business this month. They're saying it was electrical, but the weight of unspoken words hung in the air. Sam had heard the rumors, seen the signs, new faces in town, bikes with unfamiliar patches, businesses suddenly facing insurance problems or permit issues. Mom, Hannah's voice carried down from their apartment above the cafe. Have you seen my science project? Blue folder by the register, honey, Sam called back, her voice softening with maternal warmth. Footsteps thundered down the stairs as Hannah appeared, her backpack slung over one shoulder, brown hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Found it. Hannah waved the folder triumphantly before stopping short at George's booth. Morning, Mr. Henderson, want to see my diagram of the internal combustion engine? George's weathered face creased in a genuine smile. Your mom teach you about that? Everything I know about engines. Hannah beamed. She says understanding how things work helps you fix them when they break, or break them when you need to. Sam thought the old tactical assessment never far from her mind. She watched her daughter explain the diagram with pride, seeing the same focused intensity she'd once used planning operations. The morning progressed with its usual rhythm. Regular customers filtered in, each greeting Sam with familiar warmth. To them, she was just the friendly cafe owner, maybe a bit more organized than most, perhaps unusually good with repairs when equipment broke down. Mike Henderson, no relation to George, but equally familiar with the cafe's morning routine, burst through the door around 9. His usual cheerful demeanor was replaced by something darker, more urgent. Sam, he called out, moving quickly to the counter. Got something you need to hear. She recognized the tone, had heard it in mission briefings when intelligence suggested imminent contact. Hannah, honey, why don't you head to school early? Work on that presentation with Jenny. Hannah glanced between the Adults sensing the shift in atmosphere, Sam had taught her well situation awareness wasn't just for soldiers. Okay, Mom, see you after school, straight home. Sam emphasized no stops once Hannah was gone. Mike leaned in close. Savage Syndicate MC full patch members spotted heading into town. Word is they're looking to expand their business interests along Highway 40. Sam's mind shifted automatically into tactical assessment. Valley Forge sat at a crucial junction controlling access to 3 major transport routes, strategically valuable, commercially crucial, just the kind of place an organized gang would want to control. They're not just bikers, George added from his booth. Jake Legion Cooper runs them, ex-military, discharged under circumstances nobody talks about. He's been systematic, taking over small towns, establishing protection rackets, using legitimate businesses as fronts. Through the window, Sam caught the glint of chrome as 3 motorcycles rolled past the cafe, moving slow, watching, marking territory. The riders wore leather cuts bearing the Savage Syndicate's colors, a skull wrapped in chains worn by men who thought intimidation was power. They had no idea they were being assessed by someone who'd spent years studying how to dismantle organizations much more dangerous than their little gang. Any connection to the fire in Highland? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Mike nodded. Joe refused their partnership offer last week. Next thing you know, his whole garage goes up in flames. Insurance companies already denying the claims, saying it was negligence. The bell chimed again. Walt Morgan from the parts store down the street hurried in, his face tight with concern. Sam, just got word from my suppliers. They can't deliver to Valley Forge anymore. Some kind of routing issue. They can't explain. Sam's jaw tightened. The pattern was clear. Isolate, intimidate, dominated was a strategy she'd seen before, used by groups far more sophisticated than bikers. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd chosen her town. The motorcycles passed by again, slower this time. Their riders stared through the windows, a deliberate show of force. Sam met their gaze calmly, already noting details. 3 riders, military-grade boots, practiced formation. They thought they were hunting. They didn't realize they were being hunted. Start documenting everything, she said quietly. Every unfamiliar bike, every strange face, every accident or business problem. We're going to need it. You sound like you've done this before, Walt observed. Sam turned away from the window, her movements precise. As she wiped down the counter, to anyone watching, she looked like a cafe owner going about her morning routine. But her mind was already mapping patterns, identifying weaknesses, planning counters in another life. She said simply, one I thought I'd left behind. The next morning brought steel-gray clouds and the distant rumble of thunder over Valley Forge. Sam Foster watched through her cafe security cameras as 5 motorcycles pulled into her parking lot, their chrome dulled by the threatening rain. Her hand stayed steady on the coffee pot she was holding, even as her mind calculated distances, angles, potential weapons within reach. Jake Legion Cooper dismounted first, his movements betraying his military background. 6 feet of controlled aggression, wrapped in leather and denim, a facial scar cutting through his salt and pepper beard. 2 other riders flanked him, Jason Warrior Keller and Ryan Crusher Fletcher, while the N2 took up watchful positions near their bikes. Through the security feed, Sam noted their formations, their practice positioning. They were good. She'd give them that, professional, but they'd made their first mistake. They'd chosen to come during the quiet hour between breakfast and lunch rush, when they thought the cafe would be most vulnerable. Instead, they'd walked into carefully prepared ground. George Henderson sat at his usual corner booth, seemingly absorbed in his newspaper. Walt Morgan had coincidentally chosen this morning to check the parts store's inventory across the street. Mike Henderson's truck was broken down in the perfect position to block any quick exit from the parking lot. The bell chimed as Cooper pushed through the door, his presence filling the small cafe. He moved with the confidence of someone used to intimidating people with his mere presence. Fletcher and Keller spread out behind him, unconsciously maintaining tactical spacing. Welcome to Foster, Sam said, her voice carrying the same pleasant tone she used with all customers' coffee. Cooper's eyes swept the cafe, taking in every detail. His gaze lingered momentarily across her desk, her mind automatically organizing data hinted of actionable intelligence. They're not just targeting individual businesses, they're building infrastructure, supply routes, transport hubs, distribution networks. For what Walt asked doesn't matter, Winchester replied. What matters is they picked the wrong town. She paused, studying Sam, and the wrong cafe owner to threaten Sam moved to her wall map, adding markers showing syndicate movements. Cooper's smart. He's using legitimate businesses as cover. Military tactics for operations makes it hard for regular law enforcement to touch him. Good thing you're not regular law enforcement. Mike observed Sam's phone lit up with another message, this one from Sarah Hawk. Peterson Overwatch position secured. Have eyes on 3 syndicate safe houses. James and Tank standing by. They're watching the cafe. Winchester reported checking her phone. 2 bikes, trying to be subtle about it through her security feeds. Sam tracked the motorcycles circling the block. Their riders were good, maintaining proper surveillance distances, varying their patterns. But they'd made another mistake. They assumed they were the only ones watching. What's the play? Walt asked, noting how Sam studied the surveillance patterns. They expect fear. She replied, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had once commanded elite operators. Expect us to be isolated, panicked, making mistakes. Instead, we document everything, build our case. Let them think they're in control while we dismantle their operation piece by piece, like you did in the service. Winchester asked Sam's reflection in the window. Hardened. No, this is different. This is personal. She turned to face the group. In the service, we had rules of engagement, political considerations. Here, they threatened my daughter. No rules apply. The motorcycles made another pass, their engines growling in the darkness. Get some rest, Sam told the group. Tomorrow, we show the Savage Syndicate why they should have researched Valley Forge more carefully before moving in. As they left through the back door, Sam rechecked her security systems. The cafe's cameras showed the bikes making one final pass before disappearing into the night. They thought they were hunting, preparing to take down easy prey. They had no idea they were being hunted themselves. Mom Hannah's voice drifted down from their apartment. I heard voices, just some late customers. Honey, Sam climbed the stairs, finding her daughter sitting up in bed. Everything okay? Are those men coming back tomorrow? Sam sat on the bed's edge, smoothing Hannah's hair. Probably, but remember what I taught you about being prepared? Hannah nodded. Have a plan, know your exits, trust your instincts. Exactly. Sam hugged her daughter close, feeling her heartbeat. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be an interesting day. After Hannah fell asleep, Sam returned to her office. She studied the maps, the photos, the network of information spreading across her desk. It was all coming together. The Savage Syndicate thought they were targeting a simple cafe owner, a single mother they could easily intimidate. Instead, they'd awakened something far more dangerous: a mother protecting her child, a warrior defending her home, and a tactical commander with a proven record of dismantling organizations. Far more dangerous than a motorcycle gang. Her phone buzzed with one final message for the night from Robert Tank Johnson. Demo charges set at the old quarry, ready for tomorrow's distraction. Sam's lips curved in a smile that would have worried Cooper had he seen it. Everything was in place. The syndicate thought they were following their usual playbook: intimidate, isolate, dominate. But they were about to learn that some playbooks were written in blood by people far more experienced in tactical warfare than ex-military bikers. Through her cameras, she watched Valley Forge's empty streets. The town slept peacefully, unaware that it was about to become a battlefield. But this wouldn't be fought with obvious violence or brute force. This would be a war of shadows, of precisely applied pressure, of carefully orchestrated chaos. And Sam Foster had spent years learning exactly how to orchestrate chaos. The wall of her office held a simple photograph, her receiving the Silver Star. The citation wasn't visible in the image, but she knew every word by heart. It spoke of extraordinary tactical innovation and unprecedented successful dismantling of enemy infrastructure. The Savage Syndicate was about to learn exactly why she'd earned that medal, and why threatening her daughter would be the last mistake they'd ever make. Dawn painted Valley Forge in shades of gold. When the first explosion rocked the old quarry, Sam Foster watched through her cafe's windows as emergency vehicles raced past, their sirens shattering the morning quiet in her ear. A small comm unit crackled with Tank's voice. Charges triggered on schedule. Local police responding exactly as predicted. The timing was precise, exactly when the Savage Syndicate's morning patrol would be passing the quarry. Sam's security feeds showed Cooper's surveillance team breaking formation to investigate the explosion, abandoning their watch on her cafe. First objective achieved, disrupting their observation patterns. Ghost in position. Bradley Evans reported through the comm got 3 syndicate members redirecting to the quarry, 2 more breaking off from downtown patrol. Sam moved through her morning routine with practiced efficiency, noting how the syndicate's carefully planned surveillance grid was unraveling. They'd spent days establishing observation posts, mapping patrol routes. Now those routes were compromised, their disciplined structure fragmenting. As they responded to an unexpected threat. "You sure about this?" Winchester asked, entering through the back door in her detective's uniform. "That explosion is going to bring a lot of attention, that's the point," Sam replied, her voice low. "Cooper runs this like a military operation. He depends on structured patterns, predictable responses. Break those patterns, and they start making mistakes." Winchester finished, understanding dawning in her eyes. The cafe's door chimed as Elizabeth Andrews entered, her teacher's bag slung over one shoulder. To anyone watching, it looked like a regular morning coffee stop. But Sam noted the subtle hand signal. Elizabeth's team was in position around the school, ready to protect Hannah. "Interesting morning," Elizabeth said, casually accepting a coffee cup. "My students are quite excited about the explosion, some saying it sounded like professional demolition work." Sam's lips curved slightly. "Children have such active imaginations." Through her feeds, she watched Cooper himself arrive at the quarry, his usual composed demeanor showing cracks of irritation. His security grid was compromised, his surveillance patterns disrupted, and he still had to maintain the appearance of legitimate business operations. "Hawk reporting." Sarah Peterson's voice came through the C. Target 3 moving to secondary location. "Looks like they're calling in reinforcements." Sam had expected this. The syndicate's playbook was clear. When faced with unexpected resistance, escalate force, show overwhelming power. But that predictability made them vulnerable. "Got movement at the storage facility." Mike reported, his truck strategically parked for observation. "They're pulling out heavy equipment, looks military grade." "Let them," Sam replied calmly. Winchester, the detective, smiled, holding up a warrant. "County Task Force is ready the moment they move that equipment. We've got them on federal weapons charges." This was how you dismantled an organization, not through direct confrontation, but by forcing them to expose their own vulnerabilities. Every response to her provocations revealed another piece of their operation. The cafe's door chimed again. Jason Warrior Keller entered, his leather cut dusty from the quarry, his face tight with barely controlled anger. "Cooper wants to move up your deadline. He's expecting an answer now." Sam continued, wiping down the counter, her movements unhurried. "Busy morning for everyone, it seems." Keller leaned forward, trying to loom over the counter. "Things are about to get a lot busier. Accidents don't just happen at quarries, they happen in cafes, to walking routes, to schools, anywhere really." Through her calm, Sam heard Ghost's voice. "Got that recorded clear threat, adding it to the evidence file. Interesting perspective." Sam replied, her voice carrying a quiet confidence that made Keller blink. "I'll tell Mr. Cooper. I'll have my answer for him at the original time. Some things shouldn't be rushed." After Keller left, Winchester moved closer. "He's right about one thing, they're going to escalate now, count on it." Sam agreed, watching Keller's motorcycle disappear around the corner. "That's why Phase 2 starts in 30 minutes right on cue." Her phone buzzed with messages from around town. Walt's Auto Parts store suddenly discovered inventory irregularities in the syndicate's repair accounts. Mike's trucking contacts began reporting suspicious patterns in their shipping manifests. The county licensing office found concerning discrepancies in paperwork for syndicate-connected businesses. "You're not just disrupting their security," Winchester realized, watching the cascade of small problems multiply. "You're forcing them to deal with 100 minor issues at once." Sam's expression remained neutral, but her eyes carried a predator's focus. "Cooper wants to run this like a military operation. Fine, let's see how his command structure handles death by 1,000 paper cuts." Through her security feeds, she watched the syndicate scrambling to respond. Their neat, orderly operation was becoming increasingly chaotic. Cooper's carefully maintained appearance of legitimate business was beginning to show cracks. "Mom," Hannah called from the stairs, "ready for school." Sam turned, her expression softening as she saw her daughter. "Remember what we practiced?" Hannah nodded, her young face serious. "Stay with Mrs. Andrews. Don't take any alternate routes. Call immediately if I see any of the motorcycle men." "That's my girl." Sam hugged her daughter close, then watched as Elizabeth escorted her out. Through her cameras, she tracked them as until they reached the school's new security perimeter. They're going to come at you hard for this, Winchester warned. After Hannah was safely inside, no, Sam corrected, her voice carrying absolute certainty. They're going to try, but they still think they're dealing with a simple cafe owner. They haven't figured out they're actually facing someone who wrote the book on systematic organizational dismantling. Cal crackled again with Tank's voice. Phase 2 charges set. Ready, on your mark. Sam checked her watch, noting Cooper's men still tied up at the quarry, their surveillance grid and shambles, their businesses facing a dozen small but irritating problems. The syndicate thought they were masters of escalation. They were about to learn what real escalation looked like. Winchester, she said quietly, you might want to have your task force ready. Things are about to get interesting, because the Savage Syndicate was about to learn a painful lesson about assumptions. They assumed a cafe owner couldn't fight back effectively. They assumed their military background gave them tactical superiority. But most fatally, they'd assumed threatening Sam's daughter would make her afraid. Instead, it had made her focused, and a focused Sam Foster was something even hardened combat veterans learned to fear. The power went out at Foster's Corner Cafe precisely at 2:47 p.m. Sam's hands never paused as she continued wiping down on the coffee machine, even as her security system seamlessly switched to backup power, a gift from her Special Forces days that the Syndicate didn't know about. Through her carefully positioned cameras, she watched two of Cooper's men slip away from the transformer box, clearly pleased with themselves. The cafe's lights had gone dark, but her surveillance feeds showed everything, including the growing frustration on their faces when they realized the cafe security systems were still active. They've cut power to the whole block, Winchester reported through the comm, just like you predicted. Phase 1 of their standard intimidation response, Sam replied calmly, continuing to serve customers as if nothing was wrong. Her generator hummed quietly beneath the floorboards, its military-grade sound suppression making it nearly undetectable. They'll escalate to property damage next. Right on key, the sound of breaking glass echoed from behind the cafe. Ryan Crusher Fletcher and two prospects were making a show of vandalizing vehicles in the back parking lot, specifically targeting the cars belonging to Sam's regular customers. Got clear footage. Ghost confirmed through the comm, all faces visible, multiple angles, adding it to the evidence package. Sam's phone buzzed with a message from Cooper. Power outages can be dangerous, especially for food service businesses. Last chance to make the smart choice. She didn't bother responding. Instead, she watched through her feeds as the Syndicate's and intimidation campaign spread through Valley Forge. They were hitting all her suspected allies. Walt's parts store had its windows broken. Mike's trucks were being vandalized, and random health inspectors were suddenly showing up at businesses that had shown her support. They're trying to isolate you, Winchester observed, watching the systematic attacks unfold. No, Sam corrected, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who'd seen this before. They're exposing their entire operation. Every act of vandalism, every coincidental inspection, every accident, it all creates a pattern, and patterns can be used against them. Her calm crackled with Elizabeth's voice. Got two prospects watching the school. Hannah's safe inside. Our people have eyes on the watchers. Sam's networks continued reporting as the Syndicate's retaliation escalated, but with each action, they revealed more about their organization, their command structure, their business fronts, their corrupt connections. Every move they made was being documented, analyzed, and added to an ever-growing evidence file. Mom Hannah's voice came through the cal calm. Despite the situation, Mrs. Andrews says they're watching the school buses. Stay with the backup plan, Sam replied. Elizabeth's team will get you home safely. Through her feeds, she watched Cooper himself arrive at the cafe, flanked by Keller and Fletcher. Their body language had changed, the easy confidence replaced by growing frustration. Things weren't going according to their usual playbook. Quite the show of force, Sam commented as they entered, her voice carrying just a hint of amusement that made Cooper's jaw tighten. Power problems can be fixed, Cooper said, his attempt at a smooth tone betrayed by underlying tension. All these unfortunate incidents can stop. Just need your signature on our partnership agreement. Sam continued serving coffee to her remaining customers, her movements unhurried. Interesting timing, all these problems happening at once. Life's full of coincidences, Cooper replied. Smart business owners understand when to take a hint. That's when Sam played her first real card. She turned on the cafe's TV, where the local news was covering a breaking story. Federal authorities is investigating pattern of business intimidation along Highway 40. Sources suggest organized criminal enterprise using legitimate businesses as fronts. Cooper's face darkened as he watched the report, which included carefully edited surveillance footage of syndicate members engaged in various acts of vandalism. None of it was enough for immediate arrests, but it painted a compelling picture of organized criminal activity. "You're playing a dangerous game," he growled, his practiced charm cracking further. "No game," Sam replied calmly, "just running my cafe. Though I do have an excellent security system, records everything, backs up to multiple secure locations. Would be a shame if today's activities found their way to certain authorities." Fletcher moved forward aggressively, but Cooper held up a hand, studying Sam with new intensity. "You're not just a cafe owner. I serve great coffee," she replied mildly. "Ask anyone." The implied threat hung in the air. As Cooper's phone buzzed, his expression shifted from anger to concern as he read the message through her networks. Sam knew exactly what he was learning. The syndicate's legitimate business fronts were suddenly facing multiple regulatory investigations. Their carefully constructed facade was developing cracks. "This isn't over," Cooper promised, as they left, his voice carrying deadly intent. "No," Sam agreed quietly, watching them mount their bikes. "But it's not going to end the way you think." After they roared away, Winchester emerged from the back office. "They'll hit back harder. Now this kind of organization, when they feel threatened, they become predictable." Sam finished. "Cooper's ex-military. He'll respond with overwhelming force, thinking he can shock and awe us into submission. That's his next mistake." Her phone lit up with messages from her network. The syndicate was indeed mobilizing, calling in members from other chapters, preparing for a show of force. They thought they were about to demonstrate their power. Instead, they were walking into Sam's next trap, because Cooper had made a fundamental error in his tactical assessment. He thought he was fighting a lone cafe owner who'd gotten lucky with some security footage. He hadn't realized he was facing someone who'd spent years studying how to dismantle organizations exactly like his. "Time to move to phase 3, Sam said into her calmer voice, carrying the quiet authority that had once commanded elite operators. "Let's show them why threatening my family was their worst mistake." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Valley Forge as Sam's carefully laid plans continued to unfold. The syndicate thought they were bringing overwhelming force to a simple business dispute. They were about to learn why some quiet cafe owners were better left alone. Night fell over Valley Forge as Sam methodically cleaned her coffee machines, her movements deliberate and focused. Through her feeds, she tracked multiple groups of Savage Syndicate bikes converging on the town. Cooper had called in reinforcements, at least 30 riders from neighboring chapters, all moving with military precision. "They're setting up checkpoints," Ghost reported through the comm. "Got roadblocks on every major entrance to town, looking like full lockdown protocols." Sam allowed herself a small smile. Cooper was responding exactly as she predicted, falling back on military tactics, trying to control the battlefield. But he still didn't understand what kind of battle this was. "Sierra 1 in position," Tank's voice came through. "Got eyes on their staging area. They've got some serious hardware, military-grade communication gear, tactical equipment. These aren't just bikers." "No," Sam agreed quietly. "They're trying to run this like a military operation. That's why they'll fail." Her phone buzzed with an incoming text from Cooper. "Last warning, midnights. Sign the papers, or we demonstrate why we don't need your cooperation to take what we want." Through her cameras, Sam watched more bikes arrive, the riders carrying concealed weapons beneath leather cuts. Cooper was positioning his forces strategically, covering approaches, establishing fields of fire, setting up command and control positions. "He's planning something big," Winchester observed, studying the security feeds. "This is more than just intimidation now, it's desperation," Sam corrected. "We've disrupted his normal patterns, exposed parts of his operation. Now he's falling back on what he knows, overwhelming force." Her calm crackled with Elizabeth's voice. "Schools secure, Hannes with me. We've implemented Protocol 7. Sam checked watch. In precisely 17 minutes, Phase 3 would begin. Cooper thought he was preparing to demonstrate his power. Instead, he was positioning his people exactly where she wanted them. Got movement at their main compound. Ghost reported loading vehicles, destroying documents. Looks like they're preparing for something major or preparing to bug out if things go wrong, Winchester suggested. Sam shook Her head note, Cooper's too proud for that. He's consolidating resources, preparing for what he thinks will be a decisive show of force. Her network continued reporting as syndicate members took up positions around town. They were professional, thorough, covering every angle, securing every approach. To most observers, it would look like they had achieved total control of Valley Forge. "You seem awfully calm," Winchester noted, watching Sam continue her closing routine, as if nothing was wrong. "Because I've seen this before," Sam replied, her voice carrying the weight of experience. "Organizations like this, they think power comes from force, from proving they can hurt you. They never understand that real power comes from knowing your enemy." Her phone lit up with another message from Cooper, this one including a photo of Hannah's school shame. "If something happened to it overnight, still time to make the smart choice." Sam's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes, a coldness that would have warned Cooper had he been there to see it. "Time to show them what real force looks like." She keyed her calm. "All units execute Phase 3. The response was immediate and devastating across Valley Forge. Carefully prepared operations launched simultaneously. The Syndicate's communications suddenly went dark as their frequencies were jammed. Their surveillance cameras failed as Ghost's team implemented electronic countermeasures. Emotionally instead of tactically, her phone lit up with increasingly desperate messages from Cooper's lieutenants. Their supposedly secure frequencies were compromised. Their encrypted communications exposed every attempt to restore order, just created more chaos. Sierra team reports secondary targets acquired. Came tanks update. Got clear evidence of weapons caches in their business fronts. Anonymous tips going to ATF now through her cameras. Sam tracked Cooper himself, watching his composure crack as his carefully constructed operation fell apart. He'd positioned his forces for a show of strength, not realizing he'd scattered them perfectly for systematic elimination. "You're not just fighting them," Winchester realized, watching the pattern emerge. "You're destroying their ability to fight back." Cooper trained for conventional warfare, Sam explained, checking her tactical displays. "Force against force, position against position." He never learned that real victory comes from making sure the enemy can't effectively resist in the first place. "Place." Her calm crackled with Elizabeth's voice. 3 syndicate members tried approaching the school, emphasis on tried. They're currently explaining to local police why they were carrying unlicensed weapons near a school zone. Sam allowed herself a small smile. Cooper had thought threatening Hannah was his strongest play. Instead, he'd just given Sam's team the perfect opportunity to document criminal intent. Ghost team in position, Bradley reported, got their entire command meeting on video. Cooper's not happy. He's starting to realize this isn't normal resistance. Through her feeds, Sam watched the syndicate leader rage at his lieutenants. Their attempts at intimidation had backfired spectacularly. Their show of force turned against them. Now they were scattered, isolated, and being systematically stripped of their resources. "They'll try something desperate now," Winchester warned. "Count on it." Sam agreed. "That's why Phase 3C starts in exactly 7 minutes." Her network continued reporting as the carefully orchestrated chaos spread. The Syndicate's business fronts were being raided by various authorities. Their connections to organized crime exposed. Their corrupt allies and local government were suddenly facing investigations. Their entire infrastructure was being dismantled with surgical precision. Hannah's voice came through the secure channel. "Elizabeth says they're running out of places to hide. Did you plan all this? Remember what I taught you about chess?" Sam replied, her voice softening. "Sometimes you win not by taking pieces, but by controlling the board so completely your opponent can't make effective moves." A massive crash from outside drew their attention through the cameras. They watched one of the Syndicate's gun-running trucks overturn, its contents spilling across the highway right in front of a conveniently placed news crew. "That's not coincidence," Winchester said, watching the reporters swarm the scene. "Cooper thinks power comes from fear," Sam replied, "from proving he can hurt people." He never understood that real power comes from making sure your enemy's strength becomes their weakness. Her phone buzzed one final time as Cooper finally realized what he was facing. "Who are you really?" Sam's response was simple, "just a cafe owner, one you shouldn't have threatened." Because Cooper had made the most fundamental mistake in tactical warfare. He'd assumed that because he couldn't see an enemy's strength, it didn't exist. He thought his military background made him the most dangerous player on the field. Instead, he was facing someone who'd spent years perfecting the art of dismantling organizations, exactly like someone who understood that true victory didn't come from attic confrontations, but from systematically destroying an enemy's ability to effectively resist all units. Sam spoke into her caliber voice, carrying the quiet authority that had once commanded elite operators. Proceed to Phase 3D. Let's show the Savage Syndicate why threatening a Marine's child is always the last mistake they make. Across Valley Forge, her carefully positioned pieces continued their systematic dismantling of Cooper's operation. The Syndicate was about to learn that some quiet cafe owners had contingency plans that would make Special Forces units proud, and why you never ever threaten someone who wrote the book on organizational warfare started falling over Valley Forge as Phase 3D began. Through her feeds, Sam watched the Syndicate's remaining forces frantically trying to regroup at their secondary rally points, but those points had been compromised hours ago, each one rigged with surveillance equipment, their coordinates already in the hands of law enforcement. Federal Task Force, moving into position. Winchester reported, checking her tactical updates. They're coordinating with state police to lock down all major exit routes. Sam's network lit up with real-time intelligence as her plan's final phases activated. The Syndicate's emergency protocols were working against them now, their own contingency plans becoming traps. Got eyes on Keller. Goes TR transmitted. He's trying to organize an assault team. Thinks if they hit the cafe hard enough, they can still salvage this. Sam's expression didn't change as she continued her evening cleaning routine. To anyone watching through the cafe windows, she looked like a business owner preparing to close for the night. But her mind was tracking multiple tactical scenarios, calculating responses, anticipating moves. Let them come, she replied calmly. Everything's in position. The cafe security feeds showed Keller and Fletcher gathering their remaining reliable members, about 15 riders, all with military or combat experience. They were arming up, preparing for a direct assault. It was exactly what Sam had predicted they'd do. They're getting desperate, Winchester observed, watching the Syndicate's preparations. This kind of open show of force, it's not their usual style because Cooper's losing control, Sam explained, her voice carrying years of tactical experience. His organization's falling apart now. His lieutenants are trying to prove they can still project power. Her calm crackled with Elizabeth's voice. Surveillance team, 3 reports Cooper himself is missing. Left the command center 20 minutes ago. Destination unknown. Sam allowed herself a small smile. Not unknown. He's doing exactly what his profile suggested he would. Through her cameras, she tracked Cooper's progress through Valley Forge's back streets. He was alone, moving with the practiced stealth of his Special Forces training. While his lieutenants prepared for a frontal assault, he was setting up for a flanking maneuver. Sierra team has multiple vehicles approaching from the north, Tank reported. Looks like they out-of-state backup, finally showing up right on schedule, Sam noted, checking her watch. Ghost implement protocol 7. The effect was immediate. Every traffic light on the northern approach suddenly turned red. Police cars, positioned hours ago, began pulling over vehicles for routine inspections. The Syndicate's reinforcements were being systematically delayed without ever realizing it. Was intentional. Mom Hannah's voice came through the secure channel. Elizabeth says they're moving closer to the school again. I know, honey, Sam replied, her voice softening. But remember what I taught you about predictable threats. They're the easiest to counter, Hannah answered, showing she'd learned well. Sam's network continued feeding her intelligence. As the situation developed, Keller's assault team was taking up positions around the cafe, trying to establish a cordon. Cooper was working his way through her blind spots, or what he thought were blind spots, and the Syndicate's backup was being systematically entangled in a web of ordinary traffic stops and routine vehicle inspections. They're really going to do this, Winchester said, watching the pieces move into place. Hit a cafe in the middle of town in full view of everyone because they don't have a choice anymore, Sam explained. We've stripped away every other option. Now they're down to basic force. The only play they have left. Her phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. One of Cooper's emergency phones. You force this. Whatever happens next is on you. Sam's response was measured. Check your 6. Cooper, currently sneaking through what he thought was her surveillance blind spot, froze as floodlights suddenly illuminated his position. He found himself covered from multiple angles, his supposedly stealthy approach exposed, and documented Ghost Team has clear coverage. Bradley reported every approach, every position, every member of their assault team, all on multiple cameras. Through her feeds, Sam watched the Syndicate's final play unfold. They were professional. She'd give them that their assault positions were well chosen, their fields of fire properly calculated. If this had been a conventional fight, they might have even had a chance. All units in position, tank reported, ready on your mark. Sam moved to her usual spot behind the counter. Her movements, unhurried years of combat experience, had taught her that the moment before engagement was crucial. Everything had to be timed perfectly. Now they'll learn, she said quietly, why you never corner someone who specializes in springing traps. Because Cooper and his men had made the final tactical error. They thought they were setting up to assault a cafe. Instead, they'd walked into a carefully prepared kill zone, one designed not to destroy them physically, but to dismantle their entire organization in full view of law enforcement and the media. All units, Sam spoke into her caliber voice, carrying absolute certainty. Execute Phase 4. Let's show the Savage Syndicate what real tactical warfare looks like. The rain continued falling over Valley Forge as Sam's masterstroke began to unfold. The Syndicate was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous trap isn't the one that catches you, it's the one that makes you destroy yourself. While the whole world watches, the first news van arrived just as Keller's assault team moved into their final positions around Foster's Corner Cafe. Sam watched through her feeds as more media vehicles appeared, their presence no coincidence. An anonymous tip about possible criminal activity had drawn every news outlet within 50 meters of Valley Forge. They're about to go ghost, transmitted Kell, giving the final signals. 15 armed hostiles, military-style assault formation. Sam continued wiping down her counter, her movement deliberate and unhurried. The cafe's windows reflected multiple red dots as laser sights swept the interior, a deliberate show of force that played perfectly into her plan. All surveillance systems active. Tank reported every angle, covered every approach, documented. News crews are getting everything through her cameras. Sam watched Cooper, realized too late what was happening. His tactical experience finally kicked in as he saw the larger picture, how their assault positions were perfectly framed for the media, how every aggressive move they made was being broadcast live. Stand down, Cooper's voice crackled through the Syndicate's compromised communications. Everyone stand down. But Keller had already given the signal. The Syndicate's assault team burst into motion, their coordinated attack, exactly what Sam had anticipated. They moved with military precision, weapons visible, their very competence becoming evidence of organized criminal intent. Federal task force moving in, Winchester announced. Watching the feeds, they're letting the Syndicate fully commit to the assault before intervening. Sam's network continued feeding her intel as Phase 4 unfolded. Every aggressive action, every tactical movement, every piece of military equipment was being documented from multiple angles. The Syndicate's show of force had become a showcase of their own criminality. Mom Hannah's voice came through secure comms. Elizabeth says to tell you Phase 4B is ready, good girl. Sam replied, her voice carrying quiet pride. Remember what I taught you about turning strength against itself. Make them defeat themselves. Hannah answered confidently. The cafe's door burst open as Keller led the first team in, their weapons ready, their movements betraying professional training. They found Sam behind her counter, calmly drying coffee cups, as if heavily armed men weren't surrounding her. You should have taken the deal, Keller snarled, trying to project intimidation, even as camera flashes lit up the windows behind him. Should I? Sam's voice carried just enough amusement to crack Keller's composure. Look outside. He did, finally registering the media presence, the multiple cameras, the live broadcasts capturing every moment. His tactical training kicked in too late as he realized their fully planned assault had become a public relations nightmare. Ghost Team confirms full coverage. Bradley reported every news outlet in 3 states is carrying this live. Social media is exploding. Cooper's voice came through again, desperate now. All units aboard now. But it was too late. The Syndicate had committed fully to their show of force, their military-style assault playing out in front of dozens of cameras. Every attempt to back down now would only make them look more guilty. Federal units moving in Winchester updated state police, establishing outer perimeter. They're letting the syndicate dig themselves deeper with every move. Sam met Keller's increasingly uncertain gaze. "You know what the difference is between you and me?" Her voice was conversational, as if they were discussing coffee preferences. "You think power comes from showing force. I know it comes from making your enemy defeat themselves." Through her feeds, she watched the situation deteriorate. Exactly as planned, the syndicate's assault team was caught in an impossible position, continue their attack, and provide overwhelming evidence of organized criminal activity, or retreat, and expose their weakness to every rival organization. Watching the live coverage, all units in final positions. Tank reported, "Ready for Phase 4C. On your mark." Sam's phone lit up with a final message from Cooper. "You planned this, all of it?" Her response was simple. "No, you planned it. I just made sure everyone would see it." Because the syndicate had fallen into the most basic trap in tactical warfare. They'd thought they were launching an overwhelming show of force. Instead, they'd walked into a carefully prepared media ambush. Their own aggressive actions becoming evidence of their criminal enterprise. "All teams," Sam spoke into her calm, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had once commanded elite operators. "Execute Phase 4C. Show them why you never threaten someone who specializes in turning strength into weakness." As federal units began moving in and news helicopters circled overhead, Sam allowed herself a small smile. The syndicate was about to learn that sometimes the most devastating weapon isn't force or violence. It's making your enemy's power become the instrument of their own destruction. Phase 4C began with the sound of helicopters approaching Valley Forge. Not just news choppers now, but federal tactical units moving into position. Through her feeds, Sam watched the syndicate's assault team realize the full scope of their situation. Every aggressive move they'd made had been broadcast. Live their military-style operation, exposing the true nature of their organization. Multiple federal units converging. Ghost reported through the comm, "They're setting up containment zones exactly where we predicted. Syndicates running out of escape routes." Keller stood in the middle of Sam's cafe, his weapons still raised, but his confidence cracking as he processed their tactical situation. His assault team had pushed in with military precision, only to find themselves caught in the most basic of traps, their own show of force becoming evidence of organized criminal activity. "You have no idea what you've done," he gnarled, trying to maintain control even as camera flashes continued lighting up the windows behind him. "The syndicate doesn't forget, doesn't forgive." "Actually," Sam replied calmly, continuing to dry coffee cups, "I know exactly what I've done. The question is, do you take a good look around, warrior? See what's really happening here." Through her security feeds, she watched Cooper frantically trying to organize a retreat, but every escape route they'd planned had been compromised, each fallback position already under surveillance. The syndicate's military training had become a liability, their organized withdrawal patterns only providing more evidence of their professional criminal enterprise. Sierra team reports secondary units in position. Tank transmitted, "Got their backup teams completely bottled up on Highway 40. State police implementing rolling roadblocks." Winchester monitored the tactical feeds from Sam's office. "Federal task force is holding position, letting them fully commit. Every aggressive move they make is being documented from multiple angles." Sam's network continued feeding her intelligence as Phase 4C unfolded. The syndicate's attempt at overwhelming force had transformed into a showcase of their own criminality. Every tactical movement, every piece of military equipment, every coordinated action was being broadcast live to an audience that included law enforcement agencies across 3 states. Mom Hannah's voice came through the secure channel. "Elizabeth says Phase 4D is prepped. All the files are ready. Perfect timing, honey."